What's up, Savages? It's Halo History 2009 Part 1. The reason I have to put it into two parts is because basically the national championship, so much crazy shit went on, and I love tournament structure now that I've been more into esports, that I want to talk about it, but it deserves its own video. So that's basically how this is going to go. Let's begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gandhi's Thoughts, brought to you by My Nutrition. Before I get into the video, I just want to say that the human memory is really dumb. Or at least mine is. When I thought back about 2009, I was like, oh yeah, it was always straight ripping, taking on Triggers down in the finals. That was it. That's where the big rivalry, these fucking juggernauts clashing, all began. They didn't meet up in all the finals. They met up in some, but definitely definitely not all. So we're going to go ahead and catch up. So without further ado, here's going to be straight ripping the 2008 national champions. They're coming into Meadowlands, which is the first event on the pro circuit. And it's like, oh shit, these guys are the best. Now, what happened in the offseason was there was actually another team who formed. And everyone was like, okay, these guys are swinging for the fences. And this is going to be Triggers Down. Now, Triggers Down consisted of SK and and Hysteria, which is going to be mid-left, throughout the entire season. All Triggers Down was these two working together, and Hysteria was kind of like that guy who was fucking God, and SK was kind of like the objective player. He was like a censor for you Call of Duty guys, right? And they decided to pick up Hines and Pistola. Now, these two, Hines and Pistola, were like, oh shit. Everyone knew these guys were the up-and-comers who were just gonna crush everything in their fucking sight, man. Everyone knew Pistola was going to be a god. He was already a god at Halo 2, but the thing was, we were like, oh, he's young, man. He's young. He doesn't get fours. He's just an FFA kid. Boy, did that change. So, Meadowlands comes around, and the big thing with 2009 Halo 3 going into it was no team has ever won back-to-back events. So we all thought the game was fluky. And when you think back on it, it's like, oh man, this game was good, right? But when, living in that moment, everyone's like, oh, this game's fucking fluky. No one can win back-to-back events. And that's really the story of 2009. So Meadowlands comes around, and Neighbor ends up on Instinct. It's now Neighbor, Roy, Lunchbox, and Walshy, right? Neighbor was on Final Boss. He finished third. He wasn't happy. He joins Instinct. So Meadowlands comes around, and it starts off, and there's fucking upsets every fucking where, right? The big one was that Believe the Hype, who was led by this guy right here, Clutch, who would become a good buddy of mine, also would be the lead trash talker throughout Halo 3. They upset Straight Rippin' and Triggers Down. They beat Triggers Down first, and then they beat fucking Straight Rippin', and everyone's like, who the fuck are these guys? Who is Cypher? Cypher had that noob story. He was a Canadian. He could never go to events. Everyone just thought he was really good online. Couldn't do anything on land. So, I guess that's like karma back in the day in Call of Duty. I don't know. I'm assuming he's that way. He's fucking Canadian. He was probably good online. Eat shit, Damon. Rest in pieces, right? So, this team upsets these two top teams. And everyone's like, holy shit. What the fuck? And so, I remember Cassie, and I look at Puckett, and I'm like, dude, this is nuts. But I was so bad at commentating then that I was just like, yeah, man. Interesting stuff. Very, you know what I mean? So then Triggers Down, right, finds themselves in the loser's bracket. So does Straight Rippin'. And, everyone at the time's like, okay, these guys are going to be able to come back. They have to be able to. They start fucking trucking through. They start trucking through the loser's bracket, right? Well, Final Boss loses to one of them. I can't remember which one. I couldn't find it anywhere. And then Triggers Down ends up battling Straight Rippin', right? They beat out Straight Rippin'. Straight Rippin' gets fourth place. So coming off a national championship to get fourth is just that. I don't actually know why I slapped myself, but they actually took fourth place. So now it's them versus Believe the Hype. And everyone's like, okay, Believe the Hype, you guys are a fucking fluke. Eat shit. It's not going to happen again. You're screwed, right? They beat Believe the Hype, and now they go on to face Instinct. Now, when they played Instinct, everyone was like, okay, this is Neighbor's event, right? Neighbor's on Instinct. Walshy's going to win another event. He's been very consistent in Halo 3 ever since he got dropped from Final Boss. He has a lot to prove. He's playing very, very well. He's just like a tactical mastermind, right? Triggers Down ends up fucking securing the event win, and everyone's like, okay, these guys mean business. So Triggers Down wins event number 1. Going into the second event, which is going to be Columbus. Now, Columbus, this is the first time really in like Halo history where Columbus started to become a full staple. This is where like Halo kids showed up. This was the mecca of Halo. This is where everyone like came together, and this is like where the best events have ever happened. And even fast forwarding through to today, Columbus still does very, very well for console FPS, right? It's just, I don't know why. Maybe it's just the college town. Maybe it's just because MLG does good events there. Whatever it is, it goes to Columbus, okay? So Columbus rolls through, and it's like, all right, let's see how this happens. Triggers Down is the team. Will they be the first team to win back-to-back events? We're about to find out. Moving forward. So Triggers Down ends up facing off against Final Boss in the winner's bracket. And it's a fucking close series, man. It is super close. And everyone's like, okay, what's going on with Final Boss? Now, Final Boss consisted of Fear itself, Machio, Ogre 2, and Victory X. Now, Ogre 2 and Victory X would stick together throughout this entire time. Since Ogre 1 retired the same time I did, right? Ogre 2 needed someone, and he liked how Cam played. He was a selfless player. He could do it all. He had a great shot. He had a great attitude all around. Victory X was just a really good player, and Fear itself was also good. But Machio was like, he was like this, right? You know? So they have this team, and they go up against Triggers Down, and it ends up being like this close nail-biter, 3-2 finish. Triggers Down comes out on top. On the other side, Straight Rippin's just pummeling people. Straight Rippin's just like beating the shit out of people, and everyone's like, okay. Straight Rippin', maybe they have the easier side of the bracket. That could be what it is. So then they face off for Triggers Down. They 3-1 them. They're commanding. T2 does that, like, jersey shake, whatever. He was good in 09. Just wait till I get into 2010. I get to rip into that fucking douchebag. I'm an asshole. Yeah. So then, Triggers Down ends up facing off against Final Boss again in the loser's bracket. And it's a good series, and Ogre 2 just falls short again. And it was heartbreaking for us because, Columbus, hometown of Ogre 2, you always want to see people put on for their city when they're in their hometown. Anywho, we get into the finals. And everyone's like, okay, Triggers Down can do this. Straight Rippin' got 4th at the last event. It's Triggers Down can fucking do this. I believe in Hines and Ola. Holy shit, were we wrong. Straight Rippin' smokes them like a ham, bro. So obviously it's a continuation series, right? So it was a 3-1, so it starts off with the Team Slayer. And then there's going to be another Team Slayer. So I can't remember if it was Game 5 or if it was Game 7, but it was Team Slayer Narrows, right? And I'm sitting there. In 2009, I didn't have glasses, so I'm going to give you a full reenactment here. 2009, I'm sitting there with like fucking headphones on. I'm just like smiling. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to call the action. I'm so nervous on camera. Get the thing out of my face. I'm awkward. What do I do with my hands, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, let's see this shit, right? And so now, equipped, I'm sitting there and I'm fucking listening to them cast. And then, like, all of us, or I'm casting, I'm listening to them, and I hear Elamite start screaming and Narrows Team Slayer. They're up, like, 23-10. Nothing too crazy, but, like a comeback could happen. And he's like, we want the fucking steak dinner. And I'm like, trash talk. I'm excited. I, like, instant hard, right? Like, that's all I like to hear is I'm just like... And he starts screaming, like, they're not fucking good, and legit's fucking screaming. Everyone's just fucking intense. They end up beating him, like, fucking 50-26, and I'm just like, oh, that was a fucking beating. Holy hell. That was one of the craziest events of, like, a grand finals. You want to talk about anticlimactic in, like, Call of Duty? This was like, wow, Straight Rippin' is God. Right? So now the next event is going to be Dallas. Now, Dallas always has a lot of shakeups. And just like Halo history, it's always been very, very shaky throughout everything. Every time we've gone to Dallas, it's always gotten fucking weird. Like, just to reference it, in 2004, we had a 3v3 Halo 1 event when we've been doing 4v4s for forever. What were you thinking? So Dallas comes around. Now, catch everyone up to speed here. Instinct had Neighbor. Now, Neighbor kind of developed this rap as a team killer or a cancer. And Walshy ends up getting dropped from Instinct, and then he joins Carbon. Now, when he joined Carbon, it was Shockwave, okay? And, he didn't have Ghost Ayami. Ghost Ayami left for Team Instinct after this event. So, Ghost joins Instinct, Walshy comes to Carbon, Shockwave, Walshy, Defy and Nated is the Carbon team. And Instinct's Roy Lunch, Neighbor, and then Ghost Ayami. So these teams now are really starting to build, and this is where you start to see a lot of team changes, but Straight Rippin' and Triggers Down still stayed together. So regardless, still better than COD, because 2 teams stuck together. Eat shit. Kidding. So the event comes, right? And everyone's like, all right, let's see what the hell's going to happen at this one. Will Straight Rippin' be able to do this? Will they be able to get this 2-peat? Someone's got to do it, because if not, this game's a fluky piece of shit. The event comes in. Carbon. I just need to make sure. I just want to make sure I'm saying this right. Okay. So Carbon comes in here, and they look really good right off the break. And so it's like Carbon taking on Final Boss. It's like Halo 2. Everyone's all excited. And even though Carbon was not doing so well throughout the Halo 3 season, right? Like it doesn't matter. They were a brand at that point. People who were behind Carbon. And people are always going to be behind Final Boss, okay? It's Carbon versus Final Boss in the winner bracket. Carbon smokes them like a fucking ham. They end up in the winners finals, taking on Triggers Down. Now, the series ends up being pretty good, right? But Triggers Down like notches them out. So then in the losers bracket, you have Final Boss, you have Instinct with Ghost Ayami, because Instinct fell short to Triggers Down, and then you have Straight Rippin'. Everyone's like, okay, what the hell is going on in this game where, you know, Straight Rippin' comes off an event win, and then they're going to come in here and just get knocked into the losers bracket and like the semifinals? Like no one understands what the hell's going on. So Straight Rippin' edges out Final Boss for the top 4 spot, and then it's versus Instinct, and they get beat by Instinct. And Ghost Ayami's like finally back in there, right? He's been getting 8th place with Carbon. He's in the top 3. So is Shockwave. Then they battle. Well, it's not really a battle. They get fucking raped. They get absolutely annihilated. Annihilated. Flat. Period. Just fucking go home to your mother. You suck. And then Triggers Down beats them. Okay? So now, this is where we're going to end this video, because there's only 2 events left. So now, Triggers Down has won another event. So there's only 2 teams who have actually won an event here in like the past like 7 events, and that's Triggers Down and Straight Rippin', and no one else is able to really climb up there and contend with this number 1 spot. It seems like whoever shows up between Triggers Down and Straight Rippin', one of those 2 teams will be coming out on top, and no one else can contend with them. So with that said, I love you, but I don't love you. Take it easy. By the way, it is 2:30 in the morning right now while I'm filming this. It is a nightmare. My sleeping schedule sucks.